Jetpac is a 1983 shooter video game developed and published by Ultimate Play the Game, and released for the ZX Spectrum and VIC-20. It was later released for BBC Micro in 1984. The game is the first installment in the Jetman series, and is the first game to be released by the company, who were later known as Rare. The game follows Jetman as he must rebuild his rocket in order to explore different planets, whilst simultaneously defending himself from aliens. Jetpac has since been included in other Rare games such as an unlockable in Donkey Kong 64 and part of a compilation in Rare Replay. The game later spawned two sequels and a 2007 remake, Jetpac Refueled, which was released for the Xbox Live Arcade service. The game was written by Chris Stamper and graphics were designed by Tim Stamper. Jetpac was one of the very few Spectrum games also available in ROM format for use with the interface 2, allowing instantaneous loading of the game when the normal method of cassette loading could take several minutes. The game was met with critical acclaim upon release, with reviewers praising the game's presentation and playability. It later won the Game of the Year title at the Golden Joystick Awards in 1983. Gameplay. The game world is presented in a horizontal wraparound and consists of three platforms which Jetman can maneuver onto. Jetman must assemble his rocket, and then fill it with fuel before taking off to the next planet, where the procedure is broadly repeated. In addition, the player has to defend themselves from the planet's aliens, and for bonus points collect valuable resources which occasionally fall from above. After the first level, the rocket stays assembled and just requires refueling. However, every 4 levels, the rocket resets and the replacement has to be built before it can be refueled for takeoff. Each new model has a new design with a higher number written on it, although the gameplay remains unchanged. The enemies change forms each level and each alien has a different pattern of movement, which means they can be dealt with in a different manner. Development and release. The Spectrum Jetman titles each offered a unique approach to fetch for survival gameplay. Sam Pickford, in a retrospective interview with retro gamer Ashby Computers and Graphics, was founded by brothers Tim and Chris Stamper, along with Tim's wife, Carol, from their headquarters in Ashby de la Zotch in 1982. Under the trading name of Ultimate Play the Game, they began producing multiple video games for the ZX Spectrum throughout the early 1980s. The company were known for their reluctance to reveal details about their operations and upcoming projects. Little was known about their development process except that they used to work in separate teams. One team would work on development whilst the other would concentrate on other aspects such as sound or graphics. Whilst developing Jetpac, the Stamper brothers closely studied the emerging Japanese video gaming market and had started to practice developing games for their upcoming Famicom console, later predicting that the ZX Spectrum had a limited lifespan. Jetpac was one of the few Spectrum games also available in ROM format for use with the interface 2, allowing instantaneous loading of the game when the normal method of cassette loading could take several minutes. The game used the common technique of placing planar sprites with image sprites atop another, which often created graphical errors and overlapped colors on both ZX Spectrum and BBC Micro versions of the game. The game was also able to run on the 16K version of the Spectrum. Jetpac also inspired several clones and unofficial remakes, such as Archer McLean's Atari 800 game Drop Zone, which was released the following year after Jetpac. The game sold a total of 300,000 units for the ZX Spectrum and generated £1 million in revenue for Ultimate Play the Game, which enabled the Stamper brothers to gain a foothold in the early video gaming market. After the game's release, Jetpac was parodied in a long-running Crash comic strip named Lunar Jetman. The strip, designed by John Richardson, lasted from July 1984 to October 1991 and gained popular reception from readers. To develop the comic, photographs had to be processed manually on a photomechanical tone and then transferred to paper, later being fully colorized in the late 1980s. Reception. The game was critically acclaimed upon release. Crash praised the graphics and presentation, citing that they were of the highest standard, and added that it was difficult to find any real faults with the game. CVG similarly praised the graphics, stating that the presentation was superb, and the gameplay was considered addictive. In a retrospective review, Chris Wilkins of Eurogamer noted that the colorful graphics and sound effects were advanced for the time, but what truly made for a faultless experience was its simple gameplay. ZX Computing praised the game's playability and replay value, stating that Jetpac was a very well put together piece of software. The game was number 1 in the first Spectrum sales chart published by CVG. The ZX Spectrum version was voted number 73 in the U.S. Sinclair Reader's Top 100 Games of All Time in 1993 and was voted the 14th best game of all time by the readers of Retro Gamer for an article that was scheduled to be in a special Your Sinclair tribute issue. The game won the title Game of the Year at the 1983 Golden Joystick Awards. Legacy Jetpac's popularity further spawned 2 sequels, Lunar Jetman and Solar Jetman: Hunt for the Golden Warp Ship. The latter, however, was not released for the ZX Spectrum due to disappointing sales of the original NES version, although a version for the Commodore 64 was finished but never released. Since its release, Jetpac has been included in other games developed by Rare. The game is playable in Donkey Kong 64, where it could be unlocked to play in Cranky Kong's laboratory after obtaining 15 banana medals. Beating Cranky Kong's high score awards the player with the rareware coin, which is necessary to beat the game. The game was retained in the April 2015 Virtual Console re-release of Donkey Kong 64 on the Wii U, despite it being technically owned by Microsoft. An enhanced remake of Jetpac, entitled Jetpac Refueled, was released on the Xbox Live Arcade in March 2007. Microsoft's E3 2015 press conference unveiled the compilation titled Rare Replay, which has a selection of 30 games from Rare's lifetime game library, including Jetpac and its sequels and remake.